Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick, and today's tutorial is going to be a short one, but very basic. I've been arbitrating how to get information on COVID out there, and I do have some old videos when COVID first started. I even have an old one on vitamin I. I'm not going to mention anything further. I did have my clickbait picture just as a social experiment, but I'm not going to mention vitamin I any further except for the picture I uploaded just to see if it gets taken off. So that's the problem now, is that, and I'll put some links in between my talk here, from the top down, there are institutions that are trying to get doctors not to talk about anything outside the lines of group think. So there's a broadcast from the American Board of Internal Medicine and Pediatrics that if anybody is talking about misinformation, and the quote, if misinformation is there, I don't know what that actually means, but if the board deems your discussion or your perpetuation of information as misinformation, you can lose your board status. Also, I have some friends and patients that come from Advocate and North Shore, and there was information that was sent out via bulletin to doctors and APNs that if you practice any form of medicine that is not accepted as normal within the confines of what standard treatment is for COVID, you will be essentially released from Advocate or North Shore. And I'll put those links down below. So there's top-down threats that you have to stay within the group think of what's standard of care. And I think to a certain degree that's fair, but again, with COVID, the standard of care is a bit, the line is a bit blurred because this is a novel infection. So there's questions about politicization of this thing. And now there's going to be enforced or mandatory vaccinations that I believe are going to be pushed to large industry for their employees. It's very confusing, but bottom line is that if you're one of my patients, this is what I do, this is what I suggest for you. Now, you don't have to follow the FLCCC guidelines. I think it's important to follow a body of evidence that is reproducible. Now, there's a hierarchy of evidence that doctors follow. And you don't have to, we're not going to get into the weeds as far as what's important, what's the best, and what's the least desirable to put all of our eggs into as far as decision making for patients. But leave that to us. But again, I think practically speaking, there's going to be either people who get the vaccine or people who don't get the vaccine, or people who have had natural immunity, and then some combinations of both. But eventually, I honestly believe that the world will get exposed to COVID in one way or another, whether it's the vaccine or natural immunity. Now, I happen to have natural immunity, haven't had my antibodies checked from that, but I also got the Pfizer 1 and 2. So I have double duty, and the COVID is still, and will probably always be around. I think the variants are Delta. There's also Lambda. There's Mu that's coming out soon, or that's already out, but whether it gets to spike potential, I'm not sure. But there is always going to be that because there's several parts of the world that cannot get the vaccines like the United States can. Even in the United States, with the vaccines available, because we are vaccine-centric, the United States can't even get their act together as far as everybody getting the vaccine. So that is one way to defeat or sequel a virus, is to stop its vectors. But even in the United States, we can't agree on 100% of the population doing that. So I think understanding that we will always have less than 100% of the population of the world being vaccinated. So there's always going to be that little holdout group where you can have the virus mutate. So if this is going to be an endemic virus, hopefully take down its lethality, we'll probably have it turn out to be an influenza chronically. So I guess you have to figure out if you're going to have the vaccine, not vaccine, or have the infection, at least take care of your comorbidities. I did this in the beginning of 2020. You really have to be taking care of your comorbidities. So that would be your weight, your blood pressure, your sedentary life, your diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, prehypertension, cholesterol, all that stuff you should really take care of, because the bottom line stands, the more comorbidities you have, the higher your potential for a bad outcome in case you have the infection, not coming out on top. Now, I think the one thing we can say with the data, whether you interpret the data, trust the data or not, is that in the United States, we did have a surge back in March of 2020, but then it suddenly went down. Or 2021, sorry. It suddenly went down, and I think it coincided with the release of the vaccine, so there must be something good about it. We have to see what long-term data shows, and with regards to long-term data, again, we have to trust that it's randomized, placebo-controlled, and peer-reviewed. So that's what the folks that are bashing vitamin I are saying, is that we don't have any peer-reviewed data on the dosage of what the FLCCC is saying for vitamin I. So vitamin I, again, if you don't follow me, is this. So it's very hard to get now, but I do have a COVID clinic where this is included in the price of the visits for the COVID clinic, 3 months of care. Now I do have a supplier, a pharmaceutical supplier, a compounding pharmacist that makes it for my patients. And it's a relatively cheap amount, or cheap cost, but compounded I think is fair. And this business of calling vitamin I a horse pill is ridiculous. I mean, if you look at what horse pills are, penicillin's a horse pill, Lasix is a horse pill, enalapril, benazepril, metoprolol, prednisone, those are all horse pills too. If you don't know what those horse pills are, they're antibiotics, hypertensives, cardiac medicines, all those medicines that we use as humans, also horses use. So why would you label something as a horse pill when it actually is a human pill? There's an agenda there. So please trust that. I'll talk about that in another video just after this social experiment, to just see if my video, this one, gets knocked off or not. If it gets censored, then I know that, and I haven't talked about that at all, then I know that there's a hunt, or at least a robot, a bot that's searching out and censoring all the videos. So anyway, this is not to talk about randomized controlled trials, hierarchy of evidence. This is just to tell you what I use for my patients or my suggestions. And I follow the FLCCC, so please check out their website. Well Done. It's a group of doctors, mostly intensivists. That means doctors that run intensive care centers throughout the U.S., Virginia, Wisconsin, and they've done a great job. They've been together, banded together, because they were desperate and they needed to talk to each other about saves, and they found a pattern. They've recognized the pattern. They put together a protocol. So this is their vitamin protocol. So it includes, I'll just go through it now, aspirin, and you can go through the protocol yourself, just look it up, and a nice presentation on the FLCCC's website too. So just in summary, and I'm not going to get through the details of how much, but in summary, there's aspirin, vitamin D, quercetin, zinc, vitamin C, and melatonin. And these are very benign individually. Together, they're still benign. You really don't have side effects. There are individual side effects, and I've done videos on a couple of these. Individual side effects that you might want to check, like vitamin D. You can't go too high with vitamin D, but usually I don't see anybody going that high. It's rare. In fact, most patients that I see are low on vitamin D, especially north. If you live north of Georgia, you're going to be low on vitamin D. I really tell everybody, get it and take it all year round. Quercetin, this is not quercetin by itself, it's quercetin with a few things else, but I still say it's worth taking. Vitamin C, if you go too much or too high, you can get pooping issues, but the FLCCC does suggest IV vitamin C, but it's hard to find unless you go to my clinic. And I have a resource, Dina, who does do IV vitamin C, just have to get your glutathione checked. Melatonin, not really a big deal. Sometimes you can get a headache if you're super sensitive. Aspirin, if you have kidney damage, then that could be a problem, or an ulcer, that could be a problem. And as far as zinc, sometimes if you use zinc chronically, you can knock off copper and have a low copper level. But again, if your doctor checks which most of my colleagues don't check levels, then you should be okay. So that in a nutshell, again, you can look at the specific doses of how much to take, or their reasoning of why they suggest. It's really nice presentation, but their reasoning of why they suggest these vitamins in particular, and the research. So please check out the FLCCC, and if you can, support them. I think it's something that's important to go forward. I think their body of evidence is strong, and their group think is strong. It's not really like those of you who follow Joseph Mercola and have been doing so since the 90s. You know, he's a rebel of sorts, but he also makes people think, makes the government think, and he hasn't been shy in pushing his ideas. Well, the FLCCC seems to be an alternative to what's out there as far as information, and I believe that they're doing it in a fashion that is comfortable for me to trust. So when they present it in a medical way to other doctors, I think it's fair for laymen to also read what they put together. So that's why I trust the FLCCC. This is the guideline I suggest. Now there's wiggle room if you also have natural immunity, or you have immunizations that you've completed, or if you take a vitamin I, or you have your supply. I think it's still important to have your vitamin protocol or your vitamin cocktail. If you're missing other things, or if you also take magnesium, for example, which a lot of my patients do because of stress or osteopenia, you have to be careful with taking magnesium and zinc together because they sometimes compete for the same receptor. Melatonin, I take L-theanine, but sometimes if you can substitute L-theanine and melatonin and alternate, I think that's fair. I just did a video on that. K, you don't really have to take K2 for vitamin D in the protocol, but K2 helps the vitamin D bind if you have thin bones, but it's not necessary. And then if you take K2 and you also have a blood thinner, that might be a problem as well. So there's nuances in this that you have to know about. And again, these are just suggestions. If you're one of my patients, message me on the Get Healthy app, and I'll tell you specifically how much to take. Otherwise, if you're not one of my patients, get over to Herbal 411, and I'll put the link down below, and hit New Patient Consult, and you can become one of my warriors, and we can share information together, and I can at least get you guidance and direction as far as if you are not optimized, I can help you get there. If you have no doctor, or if you're in a standard relationship with a doctor, a collaborative physician, I can kind of fine-tune you to at least be the best you can be as far as lifestyle change and integrative medicine. Sometimes my colleagues don't have the bandwidth for exercise, nutrition, or vitamin deficiency, so I can lend an ear as far as guidance. So please, thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out FLCCC, check out my Herbal 411 website, and I am on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks for watching up to this point in time. Stay safe, take it easy with the information, and just be smart, listen to your inner self, and do the research. Thanks for watching.